On this channel, we provide useful programming information with practical code examples. This time, it's about the basics of CSS. You can learn about CSS selectors, combinators, and specificity while viewing them in Visual Studio Code. Enabling subtitles will make the code descriptions easier to understand. Please make use of it. Let's create a style for the H1 element to check the basic syntax of CSS. The basic structure of CSS consists of selector, property, and value. Each pair of properties and values is followed by a semicolon. Selector specifies which HTML element the style applies to. In this example, styles are applied to all header elements. Property specifies the style property to be changed, such as color or font size. Padding and color are the properties in this example. Value is the value assigned to the property. For example, for color, it could be white or number 9 CF, and for margin size, it could be 20 px. Now, let's look at selectors. CSS selectors are patterns for selecting HTML elements. By using selectors, you can apply styles to specific elements or groups of elements. Asterisk is a universal selector that applies to all elements. In this example, the font for all elements is changed. An element selector is a selector that applies to specific HTML tags by writing the HTML tag name. In this example, the text color of the strong element is changed to red. Hash is an ID selector used to select elements by ID. IDs are unique, so there can be only one element with the same ID on a single page. Dot is a class selector used to select elements by class. Add a class attribute to HTML elements to apply styles to elements that belong to that class. href equals index. HTML is an attribute selector that selects elements with a specific attribute. In this example, the text of the element with an href attribute value of index HTML is set to bold. Next, let's look at combinators. Combinators are used to combine multiple selectors to select elements that have specific relationships. While a selector selects elements individually, a combinator plays the role of defining structural relationships between elements. A descendant combinator applies styles to all specified elements within a particular element. In this example, an underline is applied to strong elements within span elements.
The greater than sign between span and m is used as a child combinator. In this example, styles are applied only to EM elements that are direct children of span elements. In the third line example, because there is an S tag between the span and EM tags, the style is not applied. The adjacent sibling combinator using the plus sign applies styles to a sibling element that appears immediately after a certain element. In this example, the text color becomes green only if a B tag appears immediately after a BR tag. If there are other tags between the BR tag and the B tag, like in "This is third text," the style will not be applied. The general sibling combinator using the tilde sign selects all sibling elements that appear after a certain element. In this example, the text color of all B tags appearing after a BR tag will be a shade of blue. Styles will still apply even if there are other tags between the BR tag and the B tag, such as "This is third text." Colon is used to select pseudo-classes. Details on pseudo-classes will be explained in another video. Double colon is used to select pseudo-elements. Details on pseudo-elements will also be explained in another video. Precedence in CSS is crucial for understanding how CSS works and preventing unexpected style applications. CSS priority determines which rule is the most powerful when multiple CSS rules are applied to the same element. The priority of CSS is mainly determined by the following factors. 1. Inline styles. Styles written directly within HTML. 2. ID selectors. 3. Classes, attribute selectors, pseudo-classes. 4. Element selectors. 5. Universal selector. The higher up the list, the higher the priority, and the lower down, the lower the priority. CSS priority is calculated by quantifying the weight of each selector. The weight of each selector is represented as follows. 1. Inline styles. Inline styles are the most powerful and are always prioritized. 2. ID selectors. One ID selector corresponds to 100 points. 3. Class, attribute selectors, pseudo-classes. These correspond to 10 points. 4. Element selectors, pseudo-elements. These correspond to 1 point. The rule with the highest score is applied. Here, the H1 tag has 3 different styles applied. H1 element selector, 1 point. Header, class selector, 10 points. Hashtag header, ID selector, 100 points. In this case, since the ID selector has the highest priority, color, blue, is applied. Use important if you want to force a style and ignore the usual priorities. Important has the most potent influence over all rules, overriding everything else. Here, color red, important, is specified, so color red takes precedence. CSS has the capability to inherit styles from parent elements to child elements. For example, properties like color and font family are inherited by default. However, if a specific child element is directly styled, the directly applied style takes precedence over inherited styles. Here, color gray is applied to the footer tag, but since color black is explicitly specified for the p element, the text of the p element is displayed in black. Meanwhile, the span element inherits the color property from the footer and appears in gray. As the name Cascading Style Sheets (CSS) implies, styles cascade. This means that if there are multiple style sheets or rules, the last defined rule takes precedence. If the priorities are the same, the style written later is applied. Here, color blue is defined later, so the text is displayed in blue. CSS's precedence is determined using algorithms such as specificity, but here we have only considered the basic parts. The basic rules are as follows. Inline styles always have the highest priority. ID selectors are powerful and take precedence over classes and tags. Class selectors and pseudo-classes have a moderate level of precedence. Tag selectors and pseudo-elements have the lowest level of precedence. Important overrides normal precedence and forcibly applies the style. The source code for this video can be downloaded from the official website. If you like, please visit the URL in the description to aid your learning. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to the channel and giving it a thumbs up. Thank you for watching.